Hello there and welcome to Creative Autistic. Today I wanted to talk about mast cell activation syndrome because June is International Mast Cell Disease Awareness Month. So firstly, what is MCAS? Here's a useful explainer from the charity Mast Cell Action. In people with MCAS, chemicals called mast cell mediators are released either too frequently or too abundantly, and or in response to triggers that are not typically considered to be harmful, for example foods or chemicals in the environment. This can lead to a wide range of symptoms that affect multiple parts of the body, or, as my MCAS doctor describes it, a hyperactive immune system. Systems that can be affected by MCAS include nose and eyes, lungs and breathing, musculoskeletal, the bladder, skin, brain and nerves, cardiovascular, and the digestive system, and more general symptoms can include anaphylaxis. So, as it's International Mast Cell Disease Awareness Month, that's quite the mouthful. I thought I'd give you my experience of MCAS as an autistic person, and I'm going to give you the information in brief really because there's just so much to tell about my experience with this condition, but I'd be here all day if I were to tell you everything. So I developed food sensitivity on a massive scale at the end of 2018, and I just suddenly had a whole load of symptoms in the form mainly of chronic pain. So I'd have occipital neuralgia, so it means having severe nerve pain go over your scalp and into your eye, so it follows the occipital nerve, and I can tell you that pain is horrific. I'd have various kind of pins and needle pain. I'd have electric shock pain go through my body as well, so there was lots of neurological stuff going on. I saw my GP about it no end of times, and all that they do is, try painkillers and nothing would work. And it was after maybe about 3 or 4 months, my friend's partner was diagnosed celiac, and it just got me thinking at that point, what if I take out gluten from my diet? And within a couple of days, my pain had really minimised. But although that seemed like good news at the time, the pain started again to get kind of worse a few days later, and it got to the stage where I started cutting out food till I was eventually down to 3 foods, and that lasted for a good few months. So I could only tolerate chicken, sweet potato and avocado, and I can tell you when you're only eating those 3 things, it's really depressing. I inevitably lost a lot of weight and I was getting more and more symptoms. So by this stage I was having a lot of gastro problems. I had a suspected ulcer. I was having loads of acid reflux and it was just really grim. But slowly I started being able to incorporate more foods as time went on. Not very many, but at least I was able to start gaining weight and start feeling a bit more like myself, and I started introducing some food supplements as well, which was really important. However, a couple of years later, I then developed a histamine intolerance. So at this stage, my tongue became really swollen and I had geographical tongue. So there was kind of like a weird pattern on my tongue, which lasted for a good few weeks actually. And at this point, I became intolerant to a whole load of food again, including raw foods. And I still can't eat any raw food because it makes my tongue really burn. And in fact, any food that I can't tolerate, which is a whole lot of food, it makes my tongue burn and I get kind of all sorts of symptoms really. So again, I had to go through a process of eliminating food and trying to slowly reintroduce foods, and I'm probably on around 20 foods now, although I have to eat gluten-free oats a lot. I have them twice a day in fact, and I have them with water, and it's yeah, pretty disgusting, but when you're limited with food, there's not a whole lot you can do really. So during this time, I was sent to all kinds of departments at the hospital because I was having all different problems. I was having a lot of eye pain, vision problems. I saw ENT because I was having ear pressure problems as well, and it felt like my hearing was kind of muffled. I've had a barium swallow, which basically allows doctors to see down your digestive system, because I've had what's called laryngospasm a few times now, and it's basically when your throat completely closes and you cannot get any air in for maybe 10 or 20 seconds, but it feels like a whole lot longer, and it's really frightening. I was also sent to a neurologist, and he diagnosed me with functional neurological disorder, and that was probably in 2019. And I remember asking the doctor at the time what the connection between food and FND is, and he didn't know. And I actually emailed a really well-known doctor who specialises in FND to ask him the same question, and he said there was no connection between food and FND. So I was really confused about that. In addition to food, I now react to smells, chemicals, and exercise, which is really depressing because finally I was able to get into jogging last year, which is something that I've never been interested in doing really, but I finally got why people really enjoyed it, because I was able to go out and just forget about everything. I found it really useful in terms of helping clear my mind for that whatever half an hour that I was jogging, and I just really loved it. But I'm at a stage now where even if I jog for less than a mile, I get horrendous stomach pain, and it's to the point where I'll have to come home and rest for an hour just for the cramping sensation to go. It's really horrible, and I'm just really restricted now as to what exercise I can do. I can just about manage kind of power walking really, but that's as much exertion as my body can cope with. Smells are a massive issue now. I remember bonfire night last year. I'd never really had too much of an issue with smells up until this point, but I just absolutely could not cope. And of course, when there's loads of bonfires going on at once, because you know it's bonfire nights, essentially the whole atmosphere is covered or full of smoke, and you you can't avoid it. So I'm basically housebound a lot of the time, and in addition to having an issue with smoke, I have a real issue with pollen as well. So in the summer I can go out in the mornings, but as the day progresses, and certainly on warmer, sunnier days, I can't go out in the afternoons because it's like hitting a brick wall. I just get to a point where my eyes are so sore, I can hardly breathe, that I have to go home. So it's a very limiting illness in that a lots of people with MCAS can't leave their home very easily, and I'm certainly one of them. And I'm finding that my sense of smell now is ridiculously good or bad. It's depending on the way you look at it really. As an autistic person, I already have major sensory issues with my hearing and light sensitivity, and to have this newly found ridiculously overwhelming sense of smell as well, it's really not very pleasant, I have to tell you. So because this has all gone on for so long, I've done a lot of research on symptoms, and earlier this year I was finally able to self-diagnose myself with MCAS, and I went to see a new GP, and at first she was really sympathetic, and she said that she wanted to do a tryptase test, which is a blood test. So I had the blood test, and of course it came back negative, as they often come back negative for people with MCAS. Essentially, the problem is that there are no NICE guidelines for people with MCAS, and NICE guidelines are basically NHS guidelines for medical workers to follow. So of course, if they don't have their instruction manual, if you like, they're at a loss as to what to do really in many cases, unless they've got a special interest in MCAS. So I felt completely defeated at that point, so I took it upon myself to go and see a private doctor, and I am in absolutely no financial position to be able to afford a private doctor, but I'd reached the point where I just thought I'm going to end up in bed all the time and not having a life at all if I don't try and seek some kind of help. So I saw a doctor online, which was really helpful, so I didn't need to leave my home, and she diagnosed me on the first session based on my symptoms really, because they're just so in line with mast cell activation syndrome. And she explained that many autistic people have MCAS, and also POTS is often comorbid with the two, and in my case it is as well. She was able to offer me a POTS diagnosis as well, so that's maybe something that I'll cover in another video. So thankfully she's been able to put me on sodium cromolyn, which is a mast cell stabiliser. I've been on this medication for about 3 months, and thankfully I'm already seeing some signs of progress. I was having some real issues with my bladder. It felt like it was vibrating, which was utterly vile, and that symptom's completely gone now, which is really great. It's helping with my eye pain. I'm able to look at screens and stuff a lot better because I was having real issues with that. My eyes just felt incapable of looking at screens sometimes, which is just madness, isn't it? And apparently it does help with food sensitivity in a lot of people as well, but with this particular medication I think you need to be on it for a full year before you see its full effects really. So I'll probably do a follow-up in months or years to come on this medication to see how I'm getting on with it. So if you would like to know more about MCAS or mast cell activation syndrome, I would get you to go and check out the Mast Cell Action website. It's an awareness charity based in the UK, and they do some fantastic work. I think there is a long way to go, however. I think NICE guidelines would be an amazing start for people with MCAS to be treated more seriously by the NHS, because there's just way too much gaslighting and misdiagnoses going on. It's, pretty grim for people with the condition at the moment. So I'll leave a link to Mast Cell Action down below, and if you've any questions about MCAS and my experience of the condition, by all means leave those down below, and I'll no doubt do a follow-up video on this at some point. So thank you for watching, give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.